Nintendo decided this year to kick off their E3 presentation with a new Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Fighter reveal. Now, this decision normally generates a lot of excitement and hype for their audience, which is why it would be a great idea to start off your E3 presentation with it. Get people excited, and then they'll probably have more enjoyment for what you have to show going forward. And while some were definitely excited at the hero's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, the reaction I saw mostly was confusion for Nintendo fans. This is mainly Nintendo fans outside of Japan, and I'll expand upon that a little bit more later. But I believe this is just due to unfamiliarity with the Dragon Quest brand in the West. Now, I was pretty excited at the reveal of the hero's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, not because I'm a big fan of the Dragon Quest series or anything like that. I've barely touched any of the Dragon Quest games, and there's something that I'm hoping to get into in the future, but it's mainly because this is some uncharted territory, and these characters will provide new lore to explore from a new game series that I'm less familiar with. But this feeling wasn't generally shared throughout Nintendo fans, at least in the West, as many were calling for Nintendo's heads upon the reveal until they got the reveal of Banjo-Kazooie near the end of the presentation, and that sort of made up for it. So I think that the inclusion of Dragon Quest characters, more so than any other, really warrants an explanation for why Nintendo decided to include them in the game. Today I'll be going over the significance of the Dragon Quest heroes inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, as I did last week with Banjo and Kazooie. And if you're new here and interested in more Super Smash Bros. Ultimate content on your way very soon, remember to subscribe and tick the bell icon so that you do not miss anything. With that being said, let's get started. Let's get into the first reason for why the heroes from Dragon Quest were included in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and it's because they're very popular with the Japanese audience. When Nintendo revealed Banjo and Kazooie, as I touched on a little bit last week, they're not as popular in Japan as they are in the West. They're the first third-party characters to be included in the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate that were created outside of Japan, which is very significant. That also means that Nintendo, a company which has its roots in Japan and its main headquarters is still there, won't get to have a character included in their premier fighting franchise that local people within Japan will have as big of an understanding of. Enter the heroes from Dragon Quest being included in the roster to make up for the inclusion of Banjo a little bit. I find it funny how it's kind of the opposite over here as it is over there in terms of the reaction to the Super Smash Bros. DLC fighters. It seems like over here there's nowhere near as much excitement about the heroes' inclusion in Smash, but Banjo and Kazooie are generating a lot of excitement. And the opposite is kind of true in Japan. For those of you who are really unfamiliar with how popular the Dragon Quest series is, it's the third biggest JRPG series in Japan, which is very significant. You could easily tell just by that fact alone why Nintendo is so eager to include the protagonists from that series within their game. So maybe if you're living in Japan and you're not as hyped about Banjo and Kazooie's inclusion, and you're not wanting to buy the Fighter Pass or something like that, well, you'll probably reconsider and want Banjo thrown in anyway for the reduced cost overall, because you're finding out that the heroes from Dragon Quest, a series that you may be familiar with, are included in the roster of Smash Bros. Or maybe they just won't buy the Fighter Pass and they're just looking at one character to buy, and this one would probably stand out to them. Recognizable characters are very important for DLC, as I was mentioning in previous videos, because you're going to have to go out and explicitly pay for this character, and if you're not interested in the character, it's pretty unlikely that you would want to buy them. There's another very significant reason for why the heroes from Dragon Quest were included in the roster of Smash though, and it's not only to appeal to the people within Japan, but also to expand the Dragon Quest brand outside of the country. As you saw during Nintendo's E3 presentation, immediately after the reveal of the heroes from Dragon Quest, they started showing new Dragon Quest games coming to the Nintendo Switch. This is obviously a clear sign of desperation to promote the series. Now, it's still really thriving in Japan, it's the third biggest JRPG series there, but can you imagine how much more the profit and the popularity would be magnified if you expand and grow the brand in the West? There's already a cult following of Dragon Quest over here, but it's pretty niche compared to other series that are out there on the market, so expanding that would probably be a good thing. Dragon Quest is a series that's published by both Square Enix and Nintendo, so it would be very beneficial for them to promote it. This decision may not have taken place if Sakurai had the complete control of determining which DLC fighters would be included in the game, and obviously since he's the director, he still has lots of input on it, but he came out and said that Nintendo was deciding who the fighters were. So why would he come out and say that if that wasn't to be the case? So let's assume that Nintendo did decide who the fighters were, and then that would clearly show a reason for why they would want to include this character in the game. Smash is a very global game, people play it all over the world, and those who are unfamiliar with JRPGs, especially more niche ones, may be interested in the game series once they see a character included in it in Super Smash Bros. Look at how many fans were introduced to Fire Emblem through Super Smash Bros. I definitely believe that the inclusion of 2 Awakening characters into Smash 4 propelled the sales of Fire Emblem Awakening and probably saved the franchise. What about Xenoblade? Shulk's inclusion in Smash 4 definitely popularized the Xenoblade series, and we've gotten new games from it every few years now. Smash Bros. Has definitely helped a lot at expanding series that are more popular in Japan to the rest of the world, and Nintendo is definitely hoping that happens with Dragon Quest. It's clear that Nintendo is pushing it hard by putting it as the first couple of segments within their E3 presentation. If you recall, last year, Daemon X Machina was shown first within Nintendo's E3 presentation, a clear sign that they wanted to push that game for this year. And while popularity hasn't grown a lot for that game, it's certainly gotten more notoriety considering that Nintendo decided to put it in that position last year. Nintendo probably decided to stop pushing it as much considering that the game wasn't getting much traction and popularity on social media or anything like that. Let's move on to another possible reason for why Nintendo wanted to include the heroes from Dragon Quest into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and this has to do with them having a unique moveset compared to some of the other characters within the game. Now hold on, I know some of you are probably going to immediately jump to the fact that these guys are sword wielders and we already have enough sword characters in Super Smash Bros. It's one of the big reasons why people hate on Fire Emblem characters being introduced for the game, but I'm not going to harp on Fire Emblem characters because I already made a video about that. What I mean by a unique moveset is that these characters have swords, but also use some other moves as well from their Dragon Quest series that are pretty unique. Just like Robin, they're no ordinary swordsman. In the gameplay of the hero's moveset, you could see some RPG elements for selecting what type of move that you could use, and some of the longer range moves look really cool. There's a sword wielding character that's definitely good for up close melee attacks, but also could use some range. And this, while not entirely unique to Super Smash Bros., definitely differentiates from the typical sword wielder within the game, and any characters with some form of projectiles are usually pretty fun and unique to experiment with. Even if you don't plan on maining the hero in Smash or anything like that, you're probably still going to try them out anyway if you have the fighter pass, and this is because of the unique way that their moveset is implemented into the game. Another reason for why the hero was chosen to be included in the roster of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is because they promote both new and old games for the Dragon Quest series. This point here is kind of an offshoot from points 1 and 2 within this video, promoting the series within Japan as well as outside of Japan, and let me explain that a little bit. Nostalgia, retro-based characters are pretty prevalent within the roster of Super Smash Bros. Banjo is even one of them, for crying out loud. These characters are specifically designed to prey on something that you really enjoyed in your childhood for the simple purpose of getting you to want to buy this character, and you'll probably enjoy buying the character because you get to sort of relive all these memories from your childhood. But nostalgia characters are not the entirety of the Super Smash Bros. Roster, as characters are included to promote new games all the time. When a new big series hits a Nintendo console, or Nintendo decides to include a character from a big series that's likely getting a new game into the roster, they're trying to promote something. Smash Bros. At its core is a fighting game which is used to promote a bunch of different series as its one entity. It uses the power of being the brand Super Smash Bros. To lift up all the smaller series within it and make them feel more special. And how does this relate to hero? Well, there are 4 different heroes included in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate within this one character. These are palette swaps, but these are characters taken from different points in the Dragon Quest series, one notably being the protagonist of the newest Dragon Quest game, and the others being protagonists of old famous Dragon Quest games from the past. And this is something that's very important because it appeals to many different types of people. If you're into the Dragon Quest series and you're getting excited for this new game, you're probably going to be wanting to play as the protagonist from the new one as your character choice. This also goes if you're not familiar with the new game and you're wondering, who is this character? I might want to try them out because I'm curious about who this is. But for the longtime fans of the Dragon Quest series who will really appreciate the inclusion of characters from the series past that maybe some newer fans don't know about, that's why you include palette swaps of the original characters within the game. So this really shows why it's very important to have characters from different points throughout the series' history within the roster of the game. This is very similar to Pokemon in my opinion in Super Smash Bros. Because you have a lot of the older Pokemon from Generation 1 who still appear throughout the newer games and whatnot, but newer Pokemon fans are probably going to be much more attracted to the inclusion of a brand new Pokemon from the newest generation in the roster of Smash. And that's why for every new Smash game we've gotten an inclusion of a character from the latest generation of Pokemon into the roster of the game. That's what this reminds me of here, and let me know what you think about this situation in the comment section down below. Why do you think the heroes from Dragon Quest were chosen to be included in the roster of Smash? What makes them special? If you're interested in this style of content, I just made a video last week about the significance of Banjo and Kazooie's inclusion in the roster of Smash, which you can check out by using the link on the screen right now. Remember to subscribe and tick the bell icon for more Smash content on your way very soon, and thank you so much for watching.